Hello everyone, this is Alexei Borealis. In this channel, I reveal the true nature of Renaissance predictive astrology, and in this video, I will debunk a modern astrological belief regarding the meaning of planets using Mercury as an example. Most people familiar with modern astrology, whether through popular articles or formal education in contemporary astrological schools, know that Mercury is said to represent intellect. And let's test how accurate this widespread claim really is. As a case study, I will examine a natal chart in which Mercury is conjunct a debilitated Saturn, traditionally considered as unfavorable placement of Mercury. So here is the chart. I conducted a survey among the astrologers asking what this conjunction typically means, and the majority agreed it indicates slow thinking. I also asked what would happen if the aspect of Saturn were to transit over Mercury and activate this conjunction, and most astrologers said this would result in clear cognitive issues. And I would like to test the same chart using the Renaissance technique. And I specifically choose to use the techniques of the Renaissance period, as astrology then had reached its highest level of development. It was strictly predictive, grounded in empirical observation, and taught in prestigious universities such as Oxford or Jagiellonian University, etc. Let's examine the natal chart through the lens of Renaissance astrology. The first thing that stands out in this chart is that Mercury is not related to speech, thinking, or intellect at all. And here is why. A planet only expresses its natural signification if it is determined, so to say, by the appropriate house. For example, the moon only represents children if it is related to the fifth house of children. Venus only signifies love if it is linked to the seventh house of love. So accordingly, for Mercury to indicate the native's intellect, it must be connected to the first house of native. However, in this chart, Mercury doesn't have such connection with the first house. In this chart, it is not located in the first house, so it doesn't emit its rays through that house towards the center of the Earth. The first house doesn't contain signs ruled by Mercury, so Mercury's reflected rays do not pass through that house either. And Mercury doesn't cast any aspect to the first house, meaning the first house doesn't contain any small, so to say, copies of Mercury in the places of aspects, which could potentially pass or emit the Mercurian rays through that first house. Thus, the first house doesn't focus or determine the Mercury's influence on the person. And Mercury in this chart cannot represent intellect. It must symbolize something else. And the question is, what exactly? According to classical astrology, Mercury rules the 12th house. And this house traditionally signifies four things: secret enemies, exile, imprisonment, or illness. And to clarify which of these particular meanings Mercury does have here, we need to see which other planets are related to the 12th house. Opposite the 12th house is the moon, and according to Marinus, a planet in the house becomes the accidental ruler of the opposite house. That makes the moon the accidental ruler of the 12th house, and moreover, the moon governs the first house representing the native's life path in general. And this can be read quite literally. The life path of the native, or at least a significant portion of it, will involve the 12th house matters. So let's ask, what do the moon and the 12th house have in common? The moon, by analogy, represents newborns, sailors, sea creatures, wanderings, and so on. And what connects these meanings with the 12th house meanings? And the only logical compatible intersection is exile and wandering. The other combinations make no sense. Therefore, the native's life path will involve exile. In this context, exile or forced emigration becomes the clearest expression of the 12th house, and Mercury, as the rule of the 12th house, primarily indicates that. Notice that Mercury is conjunct Saturn. If we interpret Mercury as the significator of immigration, we need to ask, what does Saturn signify over here? Saturn rules the 8th house, which traditionally associated with mortal threats, and naturally it also signifies death. Saturn thus combines both natural and accidental meaning, making it a particularly strong indicator of mortal danger. And this suggests that the native's emigration is bound by the life-threatening situation, to the life-threatening situation, quite literally. Now let's compare this with the modern interpretation. It claims that Mercury conjunct Saturn means slow thinking, and Saturn's transit, or Saturn's aspect, transit over Mercury would cause cognitive problems. And the Renaissance school tells us that the native will live in exile, and the transit of Saturn, or rather the aspect of Saturn over Mercury, will trigger a particular event, a forced immigration due to threat to life. So let's proceed with fact-checking to determine which interpretation is closer to reality. We will test these predictions against the verifiable life events. For this, I will use the primary direction as a timing technique, and I will use Saturn's aspect as the premise or triggering agent for the event, and Mercury will be the significator of that event. And the most relevant aspect of Saturn, which relates to the 12th house, is the aspect which falls into the 4th degree of Gemini, right on the cusp of the 12th house. This direction happens in February 1933, and usually the event, the real event, happens not right on the moment of direction perfection, but a few months afterwards. So we expect the event to happen somewhere in March or April 1933. So to summarize, the modern school expects cognitive issues in March or April 1933, and the Renaissance school expects the forced immigration due to a mortal threat during the same period. So now let's check the facts. This chart belongs to Albert Einstein. His thinking was anything but slow. In fact, it was brilliant. In late March 1933, when the Nazi purges began in Germany, Einstein fell out of favor and he renounced his citizenship, officially writing to the Prussian Academy of Science on 5th of April. He left Germany and spent the rest of his life in exile. And there is no evidence whatsoever of any cognitive dysfunction, slow thinking, or mental problems during the March or April of that year. As you can see, the modern school of astrology fails fact-checking, while the Renaissance techniques remain accurate and relevant even today. That is it for this episode. If you enjoyed this video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you.